The courtroom fell silent. A teenage boy in a tailored suit leaned back, smirking like he owned the place. "My dad can buy you," he said, calm, cocky, and completely unaware of what he'd just started. Judge Judy didn't flinch. She just stared, eyes steady, the calm before the storm. And when she finally spoke, arrogance itself went on trial. What happened next? Nobody in that courtroom was ready for it. "Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? And hey, don't forget to smash that subscribe button." The echo of his words still hung in the air, sharp, disrespectful, and dripping with privilege. The camera lingered on Judge Judy's face, unreadable, her eyes cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. The boy, Landon Pierce, reclined in his chair, one arm stretched lazily across the bench, the other smoothing his tailored suit sleeve, as if this courtroom were just another stage built for his performance. Across the aisle sat Ray Morales, the mechanic. His hands, rough and scarred from years under engines, gripped a worn folder that looked out of place next to the Pierce family's glossy legal binders. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The exhaustion in his eyes told its own story. A man who'd been stepped on too many times by people who thought money could erase decency. Judy finally broke the silence. "Let's start with the basics," she said, her voice calm but weighted. "Mr. Morales, you're suing for the cost of work performed?" Ray nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. He glanced briefly at Landon. "He brought his car to my shop, custom work on a Bentley. I spent weeks on it." He picked it up. "Never paid the bill." Landon chuckled softly, a sound that made the audience shift uncomfortably. "So, Your Honor," he said smoothly, "there was no bill to pay. The job was incomplete. My car was scratched. The interior smelled like oil. My father's legal team—" "Stop!" Judy's voice sliced through his words before he could finish. Landon blinked, startled by how quickly she'd taken control back. "I didn't ask about your father's legal team," she continued. "I asked about you. You brought the car. You used the service. You didn't pay, yes?" Landon leaned forward, smirk still in place. "So you don't understand how business works," the audience gasped. Even Ray looked up, half in disbelief. But Judy didn't flinch. She folded her hands neatly, every movement deliberate, surgical. "Enlighten me," she said softly. "How does it work?" Landon's grin widened. "You negotiate with people who matter, not with mechanics." A beat of silence, then another. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the cameras as they focused in on Judy's expression. Her eyes didn't move. Her voice stayed calm. "And in your world, who decides who matters?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. The smirk faltered just for a moment. That was all she needed. Judy turned to the bailiff. "Bring me the documents." The papers landed on her desk with a soft thud, the kind of sound that always meant truth was nearby. She looked down, scanning quickly, her pen tapping once, twice, a rhythm of coming judgment. "Mr. Pierce," she said finally, eyes lifting with quiet precision. "Let's see what your father's money looks like in the light of truth." The camera zoomed in on Landon's face, still smug, but something had shifted behind his eyes, because the trial had just begun. The sound of papers sliding across polished wood filled the room, soft, but deliberate, like a storm gathering before it speaks. Landon leaned back again, confidence restored, a faint smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth. His lawyer, an expensive man in an even more expensive suit, rose smoothly and placed a glossy folder before Judge Judy. The courtroom lights caught the Pierce family crest embossed in gold. "Your Honor," the lawyer began. Voice practiced. "My client's company has already submitted the proper documentation. You'll find signed work orders, photographic proof of alleged damages, and full correspondence. This case is, frankly, a misunderstanding." Judy didn't reply. She flipped open the folder. The camera followed her fingers, one ring catching the light as she turned each page. She read silently for a few seconds, her brow barely moving, her face unreadable. The air grew dense. Even the audience seemed afraid to breathe too loud. Ray Morales watched from across the aisle. His oil-stained folder looked ancient in comparison. Edges bent, papers creased, ink faded. He held it tighter, his thumb tracing the outline of his own signature through the worn paper. He didn't look angry, just tired. When Judy finally looked up, her gaze landed directly on Landon. "This is your documentation." Landon shrugged, pretending disinterest. It's the only version that matters. Interesting choice of words, she replied evenly. Her tone was light, but every syllable carried weight. She motioned to Ray. Mr. Morales, let me see your copy. Ray hesitated. He rose slowly, his knees stiff, and crossed the aisle. He placed his folder on the desk. Oil smudged the corner of Judy's bench when he slid it forward. For a brief second, the contrast was almost poetic. The golden Pierce folder beside the stained one, wealth and work facing each other like rival worlds. The camera tightened on Judy's eyes as she compared the documents. At first, everything looked identical. Then a pause. Her pen stopped midair. The silence stretched, humming with unspoken realization. These look the same, she said quietly, except for one signature. Landon shifted in his seat. The smirk faded, just slightly. Judy looked up, voice colder now. Mr. Pierce, according to this, your father's authorization appears here. She pointed to a line on Ray's paper, but not on yours. How do you explain that? Landon's lawyer stepped forward. Your Honor, surely you understand I asked him, Judy cut in, her tone like a scalpel. All eyes turned back to Landon. He hesitated. That must be a clerical mistake. My father delegates this sort of thing all the time. Judy leaned back, studying him with surgical calm. Delegate signatures? He blinked. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, faint but growing. Judy let the noise build for a moment before raising her hand. Silence fell. Paper shields, she murmured, glancing at the two folders. They look strong until you hold them up to the light. Her words hung there, heavy, poetic, final, and as she set the folders down, her gaze lingered on the boy's trembling fingers, because for the first time, the armor of wealth had begun to crack. The gavel hadn't even struck yet, but everyone knew something was about to explode. Judge Judy sat still, her expression composed but sharp enough to cut glass. She turned toward Ray Morales. Mr. Morales, I want to hear your side, all of it. No interruptions. The camera shifted to Ray, a close-up of his hands, the faint tremor in his knuckles, a lifetime of grease and labor written across his skin. He cleared his throat once, steadying himself. Yes, Your Honor, he said softly. It started 6 months ago. The boy, Mr. Pierce, brought his Bentley to my shop, wanted a full engine rebuild, detailing and new performance mods. Said money was no object. Landon smirked faintly, whispering something to his lawyer. Ray ignored it. He continued, voice low, honest. I worked night and day on that car. 3 weeks. Parts imported, tested, recalibrated. He came in, said it looked good, took the keys, drove out. Next thing I know, his assistant's emailing me that they won't pay the balance. Called it substandard labor. Judy's pen tapped twice, her signal for truth entering the room. Did you have a written contract? Ray nodded. Yes, ma'am. Signed by him. Judy looked toward Landon. That you? Landon smiled thinly. I sign a lot of things, Your Honor. Some people just misunderstand fine print. Judy's brow lifted slightly, but she said nothing. She motioned for Ray to continue. He swallowed hard. I've been doing this 30 years. Never had a customer walk out like that. But what hit me wasn't the money. It was the message, he paused. The silence in the courtroom grew thick, the kind that only comes when someone is about to tell the truth that hurts. He told my apprentice, Ray said slowly, that I should be grateful someone like him even brought a car like that to my shop. Said his father could buy my whole street. Gasps murmured through the audience. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Landon's smirk faltered, barely but enough for the cameras to catch it. Judy leaned forward, voice steady. And you have that apprentice's testimony? Yes, ma'am. Written and signed. She nodded once. We'll get to that. Her eyes flicked back to Landon. Mr. Pierce, you mentioned earlier that you signed the work order yourself. Landon tilted his head, a subtle arrogance creeping back in. Of course I did. I run my own accounts. My father doesn't involve himself in... Hold that thought, Judy interrupted, turning to the clerk. Mark the plaintiff's signature page for review. The clerk nodded, retrieving Ray's folder with deliberate care. The sound of the paper sliding free filled the room like thunder in miniature. Judy held the page up under the light. You said this was your signature, correct? Yes, ma'am, Landon replied, confidence restored. She studied it for a long moment, the pen tapping once, twice, and then stopping. Interesting, she murmured. Very interesting, the boy frowned. Why? Judy's eyes lifted, calm as ever. Because I have a feeling this story isn't about engines anymore. The courtroom tensed and like air before lightning because something in that signature had just whispered a secret. A rustle of paper broke the silence. Small, but sharp enough to make heads turn. Judge Judy flipped the document once more under the light. The faint shimmer of the ink caught her eye. She adjusted her glasses slightly, her tone still calm. Mr. Pierce, she began, you said you signed this work order yourself? Landon smiled, the picture of confidence. Yes, Your Honor, that's my signature. Always is. Judy didn't answer right away. The camera lingered on her face, composed, analytical, her pen tapping a slow rhythm on the bench. A beat passed. Then she looked at the clerk. Can you pull up the verification copy from the court submission file? The clerk nodded, pulling a separate folder. When the page appeared beside Ray's, the audience collectively leaned forward. 2 identical contracts, 2 identical signatures. Almost identical. Almost. Judy's pen stopped mid-tap. Her gaze shifted back to Landon. You said you sign your documents personally? He straightened. I did. She turned the pages slightly toward the light. Curious. Because according to this, she angled them for the cameras. One of these signatures slants left, the other right. Same shape, same loops, but different pressure. One from an original pen stroke, one traced. Landon froze for just a second, the kind of pause arrogance doesn't plan for. His lawyer stepped in quickly. Your Honor, we believe one of these may have been scanned and reprinted by the mechanics shop. It's not uncommon in lower tier. Judy's head turned slowly toward him. One more word, Counselor, she said evenly, and you'll find yourself learning what contempt feels like. The lawyer sat down. The air snapped quiet again. Judy refocused on Landon. I've seen thousands of signatures, Mr. Pierce. The ink tells stories you can't rewrite. Now, tell me, which one's real? He tried to recover his charm. You think I forged my own name? He laughed softly, but no one else joined. With respect, Your Honor, this is a waste of your time. Good, Judy replied, voice razor cool. Because time is money. And you just told us your family's got plenty. A few in the audience chuckled nervously. Judy didn't smile. She looked back down at the paper, then at the clerk. Where was this document notarized? The clerk flipped a few pages, frowned. Not recorded, Your Honor. The signature page is missing timestamp verification. Judy's gaze sharpened. Missing or deleted? The clerk hesitated. The file metadata shows. Deleted. A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Even Landon's composure faltered now, his jaw tightening. Judy leaned back, folding her arms. Deleted signatures, convenient. Tell me, Mr. Pierce, were you in the country on June 14th? He blinked. Excuse me? Because this work order, she said, tapping the page, that was signed that day. But according to the travel record from your father's company, she lifted another sheet the bailiff had just handed her. You were in Monaco. The camera caught the first true crack, the micro-expression of panic flickering behind Landon's practiced smirk. Judy set the papers down, slow and final. Interesting, she said softly, because this signature belongs to someone who wasn't even in the country that week. The crowd erupted in low murmurs, tension boiling under the surface. And for the first time, the boy who thought money could buy silence realized truth was about to start talking. The murmurs hadn't even faded when Judy raised her hand. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. Landon's smirk had melted into something closer to confusion, maybe even fear, though he masked it quickly. He straightened his tie, forced a smile, and tried to regain control. Your Honor, he began smoothly, I travel frequently for my father's company. The date might have been entered incorrectly. These things happen. These things, Judy echoed softly, eyes narrowing, like signatures appearing while you're on another continent. The courtroom chuckled, but Judy didn't. She was studying him like a surgeon assessing a patient before the first incision. Landon's lawyer leaned in, whispering hurriedly, but the boy brushed him off. His arrogance was reflex, the only defense he'd ever known. You can't accuse me of forgery based on pen pressure and metadata, he said. Do you even know how many documents we process weekly? Judy smiled faintly, the kind of smile that precedes a storm. "Yes," she said, "and that's exactly why people like you get sloppy." A hush swept through the room. The camera focused on Ray Morales, who sat still, hands folded tightly. For the first time, his quiet eyes looked like vindication, not gloating, not revenge, just the relief of being heard. Judy lifted the travel record again. "You were in Monaco attending a corporate gala. I have the event press release. Your name is listed as a keynote guest." Landon tried to laugh. "So what? Maybe the shop used an older document." "Then why," Judy cut in, "is your signature dated the same day as a bank wire from your father's company to your own account, marked vendor reimbursement?" Landon blinked. "Science, I don't manage those transfers personally, but they go through your authorization email, correct?" His silence answered for him. The camera caught it, the smallest shift. His breathing had changed, the rhythm of confidence breaking. Judy leaned back, voice quieter now but heavier. "Your father's company wired money into your account the same day an unsigned work order appeared in dispute. If that's coincidence, it's an expensive one," the lawyer interjected quickly. "Your Honor, unless there's concrete proof that my client—" "Proof," Judy snapped. "You want proof?" She motioned to the clerk. "Pull the authentication log from the submission server." The clerk moved swiftly, tapping at the monitor. A digital record appeared on screen. Uploader L. Pierce. Timestamp June 14th, 10:47 p.m. Monaco local time. Gasps erupted. The evidence glowed under courtroom lights like a mirror held to arrogance itself. Landon slumped back, words gone. His confidence, once a performance, had turned into quiet panic. Judy studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Mr. Pierce, your father's money can buy many things, but it cannot buy back integrity once it's spent." The audience stayed silent. Even the cameras seemed to stop moving. Then Judy turned to the bailiff. "Get me the travel record for Mr. Pierce Sr." The boy's head snapped up. "Wait, what are you doing?" Judy's eyes didn't leave the file. "Following the trail. Because arrogance rarely travels alone." The gavel rested beside her hand, waiting, patient as justice itself. The bailiff's footsteps echoed through the courtroom, each one a countdown. Landon sat motionless, eyes fixed on the floor, fingers tapping against his leg in a rhythm of denial. His lawyer whispered urgently, but he didn't hear him. The golden boy's charm had slipped. What remained was unease wearing a mask of control. Judge Judy folded her hands and waited. The silence felt alive, stretching, breathing, watching him squirm. "Mr. Pierce," she said finally, her voice calm as glass. "You mentioned earlier that your father delegates signatures. Explain that." He looked up slowly, trying to regain his composure. "My father runs several companies. He doesn't have time for paperwork. His team handles most authorizations. Sometimes I sign on his behalf and as instructed." "On his behalf," Judy repeated, pen tapping once. "Meaning you forge documents when convenient?" Landon's lawyer jumped in. "Objection, Your Honor. That's not forgery if he had implied consent." Judy turned to him with that lethal stillness she was famous for. "Counselor, the law doesn't recognize implied arrogance as authorization." "Sit down." The audience laughed softly, nervous laughter. The kind that tastes like truth. Judy faced Landon again. "So your father trusts you to act as his proxy?" Landon straightened, seizing the opportunity to sound composed. "Yes, ma'am. I've been trained in corporate protocol since I was a teenager. It's how my family operates, efficiency." "Efficiency," Judy said, voice dropping low, "isn't the same as integrity." She picked up the folder again, flipping through the pages like a surgeon exposing layers. "You see, I've met men like your father before. They teach their sons that rules are inconveniences, not boundaries." Landon bristled. "With all due respect, you don't know my father." Judy's gaze sharpened. "Then enlighten me. Because right now the evidence paints him as a man who builds walls of wealth to hide behind." Landon's jaw clenched. "He built everything we have from nothing. People envy success. That's the real crime." Judy leaned forward slightly. "Envy doesn't forge signatures, Mr. Pierce. People do." The boy's composure cracked, voice raising. "You think you understand our world." "You don't!" "My father makes people like you." "Careful," Judy interrupted, her tone turning surgical. "Finish that sentence and you'll discover what happens when arrogance testifies under oath." The room went dead silent. Even the bailiff stopped moving. Judy let the silence breathe before continuing, softer now, almost reflective. You've mistaken money for respect, Mr. Pierce. That's not inheritance. That's dependency. Landon said nothing. His chest rose and fell too fast. His fingers twisted against each other. Judy tilted her head, studying him. You said you signed documents as instructed. Tell me, did your father ever instruct you to delete records too? Landon blinked, thrown off. No. Because, Judy said, pulling out a printed email. This message from your father's executive assistant says otherwise. It reads, quote, Landon, make sure the Morales file disappears before the audit. Use discretion. The color drained from his face. She set the paper down, eyes unwavering. So you just admitted to forgery? On national television? The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even a few sharp intakes of breath from the audience who'd been holding it for too long. Landon stared at her, mouth open, no words ready. For the first time, silence became his only language. If you were sitting in that courtroom, what would you do? Stay silent or speak up? The side door creaked open, and the temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop. A tall man in a charcoal suit entered, his presence commanding, expensive, and unnervingly calm. Every eye turned toward him. Richard Pierce, the father himself. The same smirk his son once wore, now walked in wearing a Rolex. The bailiff announced him, but he didn't wait. He strode forward, straight-backed, chin high, as if the floor belonged to him. He didn't look at the cameras or the audience, only at Judge Judy. Your Honor, he said smoothly, I'm Richard Pierce. My son has clearly been misrepresented here. I'm here to clarify whatever confusion has occurred. Judy didn't stand. She didn't even blink. You're late, she said. We've been clarifying plenty without you. The father chuckled, low, confident. I'm sure. But I'm also sure this can be resolved quickly. My family doesn't need theatrics. He glanced toward his son, whose eyes darted downward, shame flickering behind them. Dad, Landon whispered, voice breaking slightly, but Richard only raised a hand, cutting him off. Don't worry, son. I'll handle this. The way he said it, handle this, made the room shift. The crowd sensed the arrogance wasn't inherited. It was learned, perfected. Judy folded her arms, her tone precise. Mr. Pierce, your handling seems to include forged documents, unauthorized signatures, and deleted records. He smiled faintly. Your Honor, in my world, we call that efficiency. The audience gasped softly. Judy didn't. Efficiency, she repeated, voice like stone. You call fraud efficiency? Richard shrugged, calm as a man discussing golf. Fraud's a strong word. Mistakes happen. People like Mr. Morales misfile things, get confused, blow issues out of proportion. I'm sure we can compensate him adequately to put this behind us. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a check on the bench. Smooth, clean, arrogant. Triple his claim, no more noise. The courtroom fell still. Even the cameras hesitated to move, as if afraid to miss what was coming. Judy looked at the check, then up at him. You think money ends accountability? Richard smirked. Money ends everything. Eventually. The sentence landed like a slap. Judy's voice stayed low, but her stare hardened. Tell me something, Mr. Pierce. When did you decide wealth was a substitute for character? He didn't answer. He just adjusted his cufflinks. Judy leaned forward slightly. You raised your son to think rules bend for him. Now you're standing in my courtroom proving he was right, until now. Richard's jaw twitched, the first crack. I don't appreciate your tone. Judy smiled faintly. That's fine. You're not here to be appreciated. You're here to be accountable. A faint murmur rippled through the room. Approval, disbelief, admiration, all blending into one hum of energy. Judy tapped the check once with her pen, then slid it aside. I can't buy silence here, Mr. Pierce, but let's hear your voice instead. She motioned to the clerk. Play the voicemail marked Exhibit C. The bailiff pressed a button. The speakers hissed with static. And then a man's voice, smooth, familiar, venomous, filled the room. Make the mechanic disappear, the voice said, and buy whoever stands in your way. A few people gasped. Landon's head dropped into his hands. Judy didn't move. She only said one thing. "Well, Mr. Pierce, seems your shadow just learned how to speak." Static bled through the speakers like a heartbeat before the storm. Then the voice came again, smooth, assured, cruelly casual. "Make the mechanic disappear. Handle it quietly. Money fixes everything, Landon." Every syllable seemed to echo against the courtroom walls, bouncing between marble and morality. The audience gasped. Even the camera crews froze. Richard Pierce's face didn't move, but his eyes betrayed the first fracture of fear, the kind that comes not from guilt, but from being caught. Judy didn't flinch. She waited until the last bit of static faded, then leaned forward, elbows on the bench, hands clasped like a closing gate. "Mr. Pierce," she said, calm as a loaded weapon, "would you like to explain that?" Richard adjusted his tie, buying seconds that had suddenly become expensive. "That recording is taken completely out of context," he said evenly. "I was referring to a contractual dispute, not what?" Judy interrupted. "Not a man's livelihood, not your son's deliberate fraud." Landon tried to speak. "It's not, he didn't mean—" "Quiet," Judy snapped. "You've done enough speaking for one lifetime." The boy fell silent. His eyes glistened, the defiance was gone, replaced by something else, guilt mixed with realization, the kind that breaks slowly, like glass under heat. Judy turned her gaze to the father again. "Mr. Pierce, the arrogance in your tone is matched only by the cowardice in your excuses. You've raised your son to believe accountability is optional. That ends here." He smirked faintly, but the tremor in his jaw betrayed him. "You can't lecture me on accountability, Judge. You're on television. You perform justice for ratings." The room erupted, gasps, a few shocked laughs, but Judy didn't react. Her silence spoke louder than any defense ever could. She let him fill it, dig deeper into his own grave. When he finally stopped, she said quietly, "The difference, Mr. Pierce, is that my justice ends with truth. Yours ends with invoices." A hush fell over the crowd again. She motioned to the bailiff. "Freeze-frame that audio log and read the date stamp." The bailiff nodded. "June 13th, 11:52 p.m. "That's one day before your son's signature appeared," Judy said. "Meaning this forgery wasn't an accident. It was an order." Richard's face drained of color. His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but Judy raised her hand. "Don't waste your breath, counselor. That tape did the talking." For the first time, Richard looked at his son, not with authority but disbelief. Landon's eyes glistened. He whispered, "Dad, you told me." "Enough," Richard hissed. "No," Judy interrupted, voice suddenly sharp. "Not enough. We've all had enough. This case isn't about a car anymore. It's about corruption passed down like inheritance." The room stayed silent. The weight of her words pressed down like gravity itself. She stood slowly, the gavel untouched beside her hand. "Mr. Pierce, you've taught your son that money silences truth. Congratulations. Today he's learning the opposite." The father tried to speak, but the bailiff's step forward silenced him. Judy turned to the clerk. "Mark that recording as Exhibit E. Forward a copy to the authorities." Then she looked directly at Landon. Her tone softened, but only slightly. "Mr. Pierce, Jr., consider this your first honest inheritance. The sound of your father's voice teaching you exactly what not to become." The gavel hit once. The echo was deafening. The recording exposes the father's corruption, completely reversing the power dynamic. Judy now holds all control, and both Pierces stand morally dismantled. The silence after the recording felt like a living thing. It hung in the courtroom, thick, electric, and merciless. Even the air seemed to wait for permission to move again. Richard Pierce didn't speak. His son didn't either. The empire they'd built on charm and intimidation had just cracked in front of everyone. And the sound of that break was louder than any gavel. Judge Judy sat unmoving. Her pen rested perfectly aligned beside the case file. "That," she said finally, "is what arrogance sounds like when the microphone's still on." The audience didn't laugh this time. There was no satisfaction, no applause, only awe. It wasn't just a legal defeat. It was a moral collapse. Richard shifted in his seat, his posture smaller now. "Your Honor, that audio was taken illegally. I'll have my attorneys. Judy cut him off, tone sharp enough to slice through denial. You'll have your attorneys do what, Mr. Pierce? Rewrite the truth? Buy the network? Threaten the court? Her voice rose only slightly, but the weight behind it felt seismic. You've treated accountability like a hobby, she continued. You and your son came in here believing the world revolved around your wallets. But today it stopped spinning for you. Landon's eyes brimmed. His lips trembled. Not from guilt yet, but from fear. The first honest emotion he'd shown since the case began. Richard turned to him, whispering harshly. Don't you dare cry. That whisper carried across the room like thunder. Judy's eyes narrowed. Let him, she said softly. It's about time one of you did something human. The room exhaled. Cameras zoomed in. A wide shot of a dynasty unraveling. Father and son sitting side by side but galaxies apart. Judy leaned back slightly. You know, Mr. Pierce, people often mistake wealth for legacy. But legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you pass down. And right now your son is drowning in the lessons you taught him. Richard opened his mouth, but no words came. His throat flexed. Pride refused to let sound escape. Judy turned toward Ray Morales. Mr. Morales, please stand. Ray rose slowly, hesitant. The man who'd spent his life in shadows of bigger names now stood under the clean light of justice. You came here for payment, Judy said. You're getting something far greater, the truth. Ray nodded, eyes glassy but proud. Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted my work to mean something. And it does, Judy said firmly, because it stood longer than their empire. The words landed like verdicts. Richard's hand clenched against the table. His cufflink hit the wood with a tiny click, the last echo of a man used to control. Judy leaned forward once more, eyes fixed on both men. If truth were a product, Mr. Pierce, your company could never afford it. Landon blinked, swallowing hard. The cameras caught his trembling jaw, the guilt starting to bloom behind his silence. Outside, reporters waited, unaware that history was happening inside. The exact second arrogance learned it could bleed. Do you think remorse should ever erase guilt, or does justice demand punishment no matter what? The air in the courtroom had changed. It wasn't electric anymore, and it was heavy. Still, like the calm that follows a hurricane, the Pierce name, once untouchable, now sat in ruin on national television. Judge Judy leaned forward, her tone softer, steadier. Mr. Morales, she said, you've been patient through all of this. You've watched men with money try to buy their way out of truth. What do you want the court to do today? All eyes turned toward Ray. He didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands, rough and oil-stained, fingers trembling slightly. You could see the years of labor in them, years that had never met a microphone or a headline. Finally, he looked up. His voice was steady but gentle. I just wanted what was fair, Your Honor, what I earned. I'm not after revenge. Landon's head snapped up, surprised. His eyes, red, wet, exhausted, met Ray's for the first time without a trace of arrogance. For a moment, the two men simply stared at each other, silent but understood. Judy nodded slowly. So you don't want full damages? Ray hesitated. No, ma'am. I just want my name cleared. My shop's reputation took a hit after this. That's worth more to me than a check. Richard Pierce shifted uncomfortably beside his son, muttering, You're a fool. Judy turned sharply. Quiet, Mr. Pierce. You've said enough foolish things for both of you. The courtroom chuckled softly, but Ray didn't. He was looking at Landon. You're not a bad kid, he said, voice breaking slightly. You just forgot what real work looks like. Landon's lip quivered. I didn't forget, he whispered. I never knew. Judy's eyes softened, though her expression remained composed. That's an honest answer, she said. And honesty, Mr. Pierce, is the first payment your family's made in this courtroom. The camera cut to Ray again. The quiet dignity of a man who'd won something greater than money. The light caught his face just right, tired eyes but proud. The underdog illuminated. Landon's lawyer leaned in, whispering, We can still settle this quietly. Offer double, but the boy shook his head. For the first time it wasn't defiance. It was refusal of the very system that had once protected him. No, he said quietly. No more money. Judy tilted her head. You're learning. Good. She folded her hands and looked at both men. Mr. Morales, the court acknowledges your integrity. You'll receive full restitution and public apology from the defendants. That will be the judgment, not as a favor but as earned justice. Ray's eyes glistened. He nodded once deeply. Thank you, Your Honor. As he sat, the courtroom seemed to exhale. The energy shifted, not in victory but in release. Judy glanced at Landon again. Funny thing about mercy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It costs nothing. Yet some people still can't afford it. Landon looked down, tears finally falling, the sound of wealth cracking open to make room for truth. The gavel rested in silence, untouched, as if even it knew the moment didn't need sound. Landon sat forward, elbows on the table, staring at the grain of the wood like it might offer a way out. The arrogance was gone. The mask was gone. What remained was something far rarer, the weight of realization. Judge Judy watched him, her face unreadable but her eyes sharp as ever. Mr. Pierce, she said quietly, before I close this case, I'm going to give you one chance to say something that matters. You can use it to justify yourself or redeem yourself. Choose wisely. Landon swallowed hard. His lawyer started to whisper, but he raised a hand to stop him. No, he said softly. No more lawyers. The courtroom shifted, the air holding its breath. Even the cameras seemed to steady their focus, framing a man at the edge of his own truth. He turned toward Ray Morales. You said I forgot what real work looks like. His voice cracked. You were right. I never saw it. My dad taught me money wins. He said everyone has a price. You just have to find the number. Ray didn't respond. He just listened, hands folded, eyes steady. Landon looked back at Judy. I did forge the document. Not for me, for him. He glanced toward his father, whose face hardened instantly. He told me to fix it. Said it'd make me look competent. Said reputation's everything. Richard hissed. Don't you dare. But Judy raised a finger, silencing him. Let him speak. Landon's breath hitched. I thought if I did it right, he'd finally be proud of me. That he'd look at me the way he looks at his business partners. Like I mattered. But the truth is, he swallowed again, tears forming. He never wanted a son. He wanted a copy. A murmur rippled through the audience. Not gossip, not shock, but empathy. The kind that only comes when you witness someone finally say what's been buried for years. Judy's tone softened. Not pity, but precision. So, Mr. Pierce, you're saying your father instructed you to commit fraud? Landon nodded slowly. He didn't have to. When you grow up under someone like him, you stop waiting for instructions. You just become them. That line hit the room like a sermon. Even Richard looked stunned. A flash of something human flickered across his face before pride buried it again. Judy leaned forward. You know what that confession cost you, don't you? Landon nodded. Everything I thought I needed. And what did it earn you? He hesitated. Then quietly, peace. The single word hung in the air, fragile but unshakable. Judy nodded slowly, her expression softening for the first time. Then maybe this courtroom did its job today. She turned to the clerk. Record that statement in full. Let the transcript show the truth, in his own words. The gavel still hadn't moved, but everyone knew something irreversible had shifted. Judy's voice came one last time, calm and final. You've just proven one thing, Mr. Pierce. Arrogance can be inherited, but truth must be earned. Landon closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. His father looked away, unable nor unwilling to meet them. And in that moment, the real verdict wasn't about money or law. It was about legacy, and which kind would survive the fall. The courtroom didn't applaud. It didn't gasp. It just breathed. The kind of collective exhale that happens when truth finally stops fighting to be heard. Judge Judy sat still, her gavel resting where it had been since the start. She didn't strike it, because some verdicts don't need sound to carry weight. Her eyes shifted between father and son, two men who looked almost identical, except one had just lost his armor. Landon sat forward, shoulders slumped, eyes swollen from tears. His hands, once smooth and confident, now trembled openly on the desk. For the first time, the cameras saw him as human, not polished, not untouchable, just guilty and tired. Richard Pierce, however, looked carved from ice. He didn't move. His stare locked on his son like disappointment was a weapon. You've humiliated this family, he whispered harshly. Do you even realize what you've done? Landon looked up, and for once his answer came without fear. "I told the truth." Richard leaned in, his voice low but venomous. "The truth doesn't pay bills. It destroys them." Judy's tone cut through their private exchange. "Mr. Pierce," she said evenly, "I suggest you stop talking before you remind everyone why your empire's falling apart." The audience murmured, quiet but charged. The father fell silent, not out of obedience, but because his words no longer carried weight here. Judy turned toward Ray Morales, who had been sitting quietly, almost stunned by what he'd witnessed. "Mr. Morales," she said, "you've seen more truth in this courtroom than some people see in a lifetime. You've handled yourself with dignity, and the court recognizes that." Ray stood, humbly nodding. "I just wanted it to stop," he said. "Not just the lies, the way people like them treat people like me." "Like we're less," Judy softened just slightly. "You're not less. You're just one of the few who still understand that work without integrity is failure wearing a suit." He nodded once, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Your Honor." Landon turned toward him slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaky, unsure but real. "For what I did. For how I treated you. You didn't deserve that." Ray studied him for a long moment. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. "You can't undo it," he said quietly, "but you can remember it. That's how you make it worth something." The words hung between them, not forgiveness, not condemnation, just truth, raw and shared. The father shifted again, muttering, "This is absurd. We're being humiliated on live television." Judy's eyes flashed. "You're not being humiliated, Mr. Pierce. You're being seen." That line landed like a final strike. The audience fell into perfect silence. Even the cameras lingered on Richard's face, the exact frame of a man watching his influence evaporate. Judy finally exhaled. "There will be consequences beyond this courtroom," she said, her voice calm but absolute. "Financial, legal, and moral. And I hope they're heavy, because maybe then they'll mean something." The gavel came down once, a single echoing sound that didn't signal closure, just exposure. Outside, reporters waited like vultures. Inside, only one truth remained clear. Money could hide a lie for years, but it couldn't outrun a microphone or a conscience. The courthouse doors swung open like a stage curtain, and the noise outside rushed in. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted names. The once invincible Pierce family now walked through a storm of microphones and judgment. Inside the courtroom, Judge Judy hadn't moved. She watched through the glass panel as father and son faced the world, not as kings but as cautionary tales. Richard barked orders at his security. "Keep them back. Don't let anyone near us." Landon followed behind, shoulders hunched, his once flawless suit now wrinkled under the weight of everything he couldn't control. "Mr. Pierce," a reporter shouted, "did you instruct your son to falsify records?" "Mr. Pierce, Jr., are you aware of the criminal implications?" Neither answered. Their silence said enough. That silence, the same weapon they'd used to suppress truth for years, now became their punishment. Every unanswered question echoed louder than any statement they could have made. Back inside, Judy tapped her pen against the bench, slow and deliberate. "The world will hear this case," she said to the clerk. "No sealing, no redaction. Every word stays on record." The clerk hesitated. "Your Honor, they're requesting private arbitration, off camera." Judy shook her head. "Of course they are. Power always wants its mistakes edited." Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "Not this time." She stood, straightening her robe. "We're keeping the cameras rolling. If people want to see justice, let them see what it looks like when arrogance stands trial." Outside, chaos brewed. Richard's PR representative pushed through the crowd, shoving microphones away, shouting, "No comment!" But every flash, every camera angle captured the same image, a father glaring at his son, the embodiment of pride consuming itself. Landon's pace slowed as they reached the courthouse steps. "Dad," he said quietly, "maybe we should just—" "Not another word," Richard snapped. His tone wasn't anger now. It was desperation disguised as control. He looked out at the swarm of reporters. "This is beneath us," he muttered. Though his trembling hands betrayed him, Landon looked at him, eyes hollow. Maybe that's the problem. The words stopped his father cold. For the first time, Richard Pierce had nothing left to say. The cameras caught it, the silence between them, and turned it into a headline. Within minutes, networks replayed the scene on a loop. Commentators debated legacy, privilege, and justice. Social media flamed with hashtag Pierce Truth, hashtag Money Can't Buy Mercy. But Judy wasn't celebrating. She watched from her bench, alone now, her reflection faint in the courtroom glass. She knew justice wasn't victory. It was exposure. And exposure came with a price. She glanced at the empty defendant's table. Funny, she murmured to herself, how people with everything end up fighting hardest to keep what they never earned. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. The day had ended, but the story hadn't. Outside, truth had gone viral, and the Pierce empire trembled under the weight of every retweet. Every replay, every person whispering, she finally made them answer. And yet, even as the noise grew louder, Judy's words from earlier echoed quietly in the air. Accountability doesn't hide behind money. No, it follows you home. The next morning, the world woke up to judgment. Screens across America glowed with one headline. Judge Judy exposes billionaire family's corruption. You can't buy integrity. Clips of the hearing looped endlessly. The moment Richard Pierce's voice played through the speakers. The moment his son confessed. The moment silence became their undoing. It wasn't just courtroom drama anymore. It was national therapy. Outside her chambers, producers from every network crowded the hallway, all begging for comment. But Judge Judy didn't answer. She wasn't chasing ratings. She'd already delivered what no broadcast could script: unfiltered truth. Inside, the courtroom lights flickered back on for the official verdict. Landon and Richard stood side by side, though now they seemed like strangers inhabiting the same last name. Gone were the tailored smiles and tailored suits. What stood before her were two men stripped of illusion. Judy began calmly, her tone precise, every word measured like a surgeon's cut. This court finds the defendant, Mr. Landon Pierce, responsible for breach of contract, forgery and falsification of business records. Full restitution to Mr. Morales is hereby ordered with damages. Landon nodded silently, accepting. His father didn't. Richard stepped forward. This is absurd. You have no jurisdiction to... Judy raised a hand. Sit down, Mr. Pierce. You've interrupted justice long enough. The audience laughed, not mockingly, but with a kind of cathartic release. The power imbalance had reversed, she continued. Further, due to the evidence submitted, including your own statements, this case will be referred to the Attorney General for investigation. What happens after today is no longer within this courtroom. It's in the hands of the law. The cameras zoomed in on Richard's face, pale, drained, trembling with a quiet fury. He wasn't used to losing. He wasn't used to consequence. Ray Morales sat quietly in the front row, his head bowed. Judy looked at him and gave the smallest nod. Respect without spectacle. Mr. Morales, you may leave here today knowing something few men ever do. You faced arrogance with truth, and truth won. A tear slipped down Ray's cheek. He wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. Thank you, Your Honor, he whispered. Judy looked at the Pierces one last time. You tried to buy silence, she said. Instead, you bought an audience. Her gavel came down hard this time, a sound that cracked through every network feed, every phone screen, every echo chamber that had been watching. In the crowd, a young journalist whispered, That's the sound of history. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. The verdict trended in 20 countries. Memes, headlines, and hashtags lit up the internet. Hashtag arrogance on trial, hashtag Pierce downfall. Richard Pierce's company stock plummeted by the afternoon. His board released a statement announcing an internal ethics review. His empire, once ironclad, was now bleeding credibility faster than money could patch it, and through it all, one quote replayed on every broadcast, Judy's voice clear and cutting. Justice doesn't sell. It teaches. It was replayed on late-night shows, printed on posters, even tattooed by a few fans. But in the quiet of her chambers, Judy knew the truth behind the line. Justice wasn't spectacle. It was consequence with a microphone. Before you hear the verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change, or do people just get better at hiding who they are? The courtroom was empty now. No cameras, no murmuring audience. Just the faint hum of the ceiling lights and the lingering scent of coffee gone cold. Judge Judy sat alone at her bench, the file marked Pierce versus Morales still open before her. The edges of the paper were bent from the storm it had weathered, a fitting relic of arrogance undone. She didn't move for a long while. The world outside was already running wild with headlines, hashtags, and sound bites, but here, in this quiet aftermath, truth didn't need applause. It just existed. The clerk entered softly, hesitant. It's all over the news, Judge. They're calling it the trial that changed everything. Judy didn't look up. It didn't change everything, she said calmly. It just reminded people that money doesn't make you taller in front of the truth. The clerk smiled faintly. Well, the Pierce family's holding a press conference. Seems they're trying to spin it. Judy gave a small, knowing smirk. Spin all they want. The footage will outlive their words. She closed the file gently and rose from her chair. The courtroom felt different now. Not triumphant, but cleansed. The echoes that once belonged to arrogance now belonged to something quieter, something rarer. Accountability. Outside, the courthouse steps gleamed under the morning sun. Ray Morales stood at the bottom, surrounded by a few reporters. His words were simple, humble. I didn't win anything, he said. The truth did. Landon Pierce stood a few yards away, no entourage, no reporters, no father. Just a man stripped of everything that once defined him. His eyes met Ray's briefly across the distance. He didn't speak, but he nodded, a silent gesture that said thank you and I'm sorry at once. Ray nodded back. Then he turned away, heading down the steps toward a quiet street where no cameras followed. A man returning to his small shop with his dignity intact. Landon lingered a moment longer, staring at the courthouse doors. His reflection in the glass was faint, and for the first time he didn't recognize the man looking back. Maybe that was the point. A car pulled up beside him. His father sat inside, window down, face stiff. Get in, Richard said. Landon hesitated. No, Richard blinked. Excuse me? I'm walking, Landon replied, his voice firm. You taught me to lie. I think it's time I learned how to stand. The window rolled up. The car drove off. And for once the Pierce legacy left without its heir. Back inside, Judge Judy returned to her bench. She sat down, exhaled, and stared at the empty seats, each one now a ghost of pride, greed, and revelation. The camera of memory zoomed in on her face, steady and thoughtful. She whispered, almost to herself, arrogance always thinks it owns the room. But truth never needs to raise its voice. She reached for the gavel one last time, not to strike it, but to hold it. The same tool she'd used to silence arrogance now rested gently in her hand. Symbolic, weightless, earned. Her voice, though quiet, carried the final verdict, not just for the Pierces, but for everyone who'd ever believed power could outrun consequence. Arrogance thinks it rules the world. But in this courtroom it only ever rents it, until the truth evicts it. The gavel touched the desk softly. Not a bang, a whisper. The lights dimmed. The echo lingered, steady, unshakable, eternal. And somewhere in the quiet distance the sound of humility began to grow.